Welcome back, everyone, to Mongols. I am Mike. Joining me is Josh and Justin. This is our Memphis reaction show. So the Hounds lost 2-0 to 901 FC, and we are going to talk all about it. But first, Josh, how are things?
Yeah, good. I mean, things are good. Trying not to be too negative right off the bat. So, yeah, life's great.
Good. Justin, you hanging in there? You okay?
Listen, I had a great Memorial Day, like Sunday today, and looking forward to a day off tomorrow. So yeah, I'm great. Like you set soccer aside for a second, I'm doing great. It's a great Sunday night.
Good. Yes, and you mentioned here that it's Sunday night. For those of you who are watching and or listening and are like, wait a minute, don't you guys typically do this on Monday nights? Yes, we do. This is another slight little programming change that we're playing with. It doesn't mean that it's going to stick, but the idea is maybe we'll try doing some reaction shows the day after the game rather than two, so that maybe the reactions are just a bit more raw. I kind of toyed with the idea of doing reactions like the same night as games, but then got to 10:30 last night and went, nope, I'm going to bed. I don't want to talk about this game. Like, we're not going to do it. So maybe we'll try this for a little bit and just sort of see how it plays out. But it's part of that sort of broader context of, we've already got interviews lined up for this week to talk to Indy, to talk to people from Indy, to talk to players, to do our prediction show, whole thing. So just all of that more content so that we all have more Hounds in our lives. And I will say, I don't know how you guys felt about it, but sitting down for the game last night, I was far more interested and engaged in what was going to happen because I felt like I had so much more context and I've been hearing about the Hounds all week. Maybe it's just me because I'm the one sort of like leading these shows, but it definitely, I felt even more invested than usual. So
I also think it's kind of nice that the idea of breaking these down into shorter episodes essentially is nice, because I know for myself at least, I look at a podcast and if I see anything over an hour, I'm just like, that's a long time to commit to this. But then like seeing 40 minutes, 30 minutes, like, okay, I can go those in chunks and it's a little bit easier. Maybe it's because I don't really have a commute anymore. So I'm not like driving, 30 minutes a day or an hour a day. But yeah, it's a little bit nicer to have smaller chunks that I can just easily digest.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Same.
Anybody who's joining us live on YouTube, feel free to jump into the chats, add questions, comments, thoughts, and we will address them as we go through the topics. Gentlemen, let's talk about this game. So I mentioned Hounds lost 2-0 to Memphis on the road at AutoZone Park. Justin, you and I sort of did our prediction show. You had said 2-1 Hounds win. Lawrence, our buddy from 901 Soccer Pod, predicted a 2-1 Memphis win. I had said that I thought that Memphis were good for at least 2 goals, so I was hoping for a 3-3 draw. I was thinking that all of these opportunities would like turn into actual goals this game. That clearly didn't happen. So the way I sort of broke these takeaways up was kind of in the negatives and positives. I'm trying to like really leave here with some good vibes, I'm hoping. Josh, give me a thought from this.
I would say, you're a classic tale of two halves, but I think it was actually more like that moment where Memphis made the 2 subs. And that changed the dynamic, and it feels like it was a tactical thing that we just got outsmarted. That, like, I know they got a goal early, and that sucks, and it is what it is, but it was like, 6 minutes in, and you can't really... I mean, they had a whole game to play pretty much after that, and it still felt like we were on the front foot. So that first half, I do feel like up until those subs, we were doing great. And then suddenly they did a formation change with the subs, and I was scratching my head when it happened because I was like, 2 guys are on yellows on their team, and they didn't even sub those guys out. They just subbed out 2 other random guys, and it feels like more defensive play and blah, blah, blah. And I thought it was silly subs, like just reactionary, and it turned out to be a fantastic tactic because, yeah, then they packed the back line on their side, and the Hounds just fell flat after that. It felt like
it harkened back to me to Justin, something that you said last week. I think during our reaction show where you said in the last game against North Carolina, it felt like Lily got out coached. Do you feel like it did feel like those two subs was a turning point? Did you feel that that was the case in this game as well?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the first 43 minutes of this game, I was generally pleased. I was generally pleased. I mean, it was like we had there was two times where one was Hogan's free header in the box that just happened to hit, it got past the keeper, but got saved off the line by a defender. And then a couple minutes later, we hit the post pretty on a. It was not like a little, whatever. And then they had their other weird, almost scoring an own goal for us that got saved off the line too. And I think like putting all those together, I was like, all right, cool. We're creating opportunities again. We're like putting pressure on. And then, yeah, they made those subs. And I kind of thought, oh, that's weird. And then we kind of went into halftime and then nothing happened after halftime. And I was like, cool, those were two good subs. And it's just frustrating. It is just frustrating.
This was a game too, Justin, you and I had talked in the sort of preview show about how Lily hasn't really tinkered. This felt like a little bit of tinkering. It was still somewhat within the realms of, I think, what we were expecting. I thought what was interesting was when we had possession, it almost felt like we were playing with like a diamond defense where you really didn't have the two wingbacks, Etsu and Blackstock, were much further up the field. Like Blackstock's resting position was almost as a forward out wide, which was interesting. And we sort of had Rivera as the tip of the diamond. And part of me had wondered, we hadn't talked about it last week, but the effectiveness of Marlon, and just how many goals he has now scored, 5 and 5? Just whether or not we would try to do something like Rovey man marking him. And in the case of that goal, 6 minutes in, you could tell that Gabby was upset because the ball was played in. It sort of dropped back to Marlon and completely unmarked. Like Rovey was sort of behind him trying to catch up. And that was exactly what they did not want. And that's why Gabby was so up in arms that he was able to get a free shot outside the 18 where we know that he can be so potent. So I don't know, man. Like I agree. There were some complaints in our Slack channel during the first half, but I agree that we look like the better team. The next team to score was going to be us until those two subs happened. And then it all just kind of like fell apart after the second half when it started and they scored again right away. And that was kind of it. So, yeah. I don't know. Justin, give me a takeaway.
I mean, I thought the first 43 minutes of the game were actually pretty good. I was enjoying watching us play after having watched the first half of the Union play Charlotte and they looked awful, and then turning on the Riverhounds and be like, cool, this is actually a pretty good game, pretty fun game. Feels like we're on a pretty good thing. And I think that half work was one. I thought our set pieces, we and Hogan was able to get free in the box a ton, and so I like that a lot. I like Danny Griffin's play a lot in that half of being able to kind of be the ticking in some ways of, wasn't creating a ton of offense, but he was keeping the ball moving. He was kind of showing up where he needed to, finding those hits of space and all of that. I wasn't all that upset with the goal. I mean, yeah, it is what it is, but it's also a moment of brilliance from Marlon. And I like no keeper in the world's going to save that one. Could you put a defender on him? Sure. But like no keeper in the world's going to save it. So I kind of on this kind of individual moment of greatness. But I was like, man, if we could have just got one of those weird shots or whatever to get into the net, I feel like we would have been in a pretty good position, but we just couldn't.
Yeah. I think my takeaway from this, or I have a couple takeaways, is that I almost feel like for the past few weeks, we've kind of been making excuses where it's like, like against North Carolina, it was just one bad half. Like we're looking good, we're getting chances, we keep getting chances, but like we're just not really doing anything with them. And I forget who it was. Someone made it might have been Steve made a comment about there were a couple of times that Memphis was playing long balls over the top, and Marlon was just being an absolute pest to our center backs, just like, causing them to mess up headers, causing them to have to make passes they didn't want to make. And I think that the insinuation was that our forwards just don't seem to do that. Like we kind of make runs, but we're not really holding up the ball. We're not really creating any damage, or they're not really creating any opportunities on their own. And, not to pick on our forwards specifically, but I went back to look at all of the goals so far this season that came from our forwards. So basically Kizza, Sterling, and Dien scored the goals so far this season. And looking at every one of the goals, almost every single goal was sort of a one-touch shot. Like that's it. All of the hard work that was done to create the goals are coming from players like Etu or Blackstock or Rovey or Mertz or Griffin, where more times than not the ball is getting out wide, and then you just have these crazy passes or rough shots into the box, and our guys are just tapping them in, or they're kind of like garbage goals. And I think that that's different from what we had last year. I think Dikwa could get those garbage goals, but Dikwa was doing a lot of the hold-up play as well, where we could play the ball into his feet and get the rest of the team forward into the attack to try to do stuff. And it almost feels to me, and you guys can feel free to disagree, it almost feels to me like we're afraid, or if this is tactical, it might be tactical, we're afraid to play the ball forward directly into our forwards and let them make runs. It seemed like every time Griffin got the ball, he was trying to swing it out wide to Etu or Blackstock or Mertz. And we just don't want to play it directly forward, either because we know that our guys aren't going to beat the guys up front, or that may just be the type of forwards that we have now. They're just the game plan is get it out wide, throw it in the box, and they're going to get the garbage goals. And there's a guy on Memphis whose name was Tululu or something like that, and it just made me think like, showing me like Tola, like there was an opportunity where we let him go. But he was another one who was kind of doing that dirty work the way that Dikwa did, and could have been useful in this offense. But maybe I'm looking too far into this, but I don't know. Josh, what do you think about our forwards and sort of their contribution at this point?
I still think Sterling has good footwork and he can do some really clever stuff. I just don't know if there's anywhere for him to give it. Like your garbage goals, easy goals, let's say, like playing the ball to their feet and having them in an open spot. I think Sterling can be the guy who sets up those plays. I think he's better at that than scoring goals at this point, which is a problem when he's a forward. I mean, and I think it's also a problem when, Kizza's not having the greatest season so far as that goes. And there's not really anyone else having a good season as far as scoring goes. So it's a problem. And it doesn't matter how good our defense is, how good our midfield is. If we're not scoring goals, then there's no point. So yeah, it's pretty bleak right now, if I'm being honest.
Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of your thoughts. I think it's hard for me in this situation because I trust Bob, or I feel like I've trusted Bob. And then this is a words right now that I just don't know what he's seen or not seen. And especially last night, I thought Kizza was just not, and that was contrasted by Sterling. I thought Sterling was actually last night. And there was a lot of times where we did play it into his feet. He tried to turn and kind of go across the box, and the kid would just, and it's like you've got to make that run and give him somewhere to go with the ball, or give him a pass, and have no passes, and so they would swing it out to Blackstock or two or whatever. And it just like there was no passes within the box. And then that was compounded by Griffin, Sample. None of them are getting forward into the box. Like none of them are making that second or third run into the box to create a little bit of havoc. And so I think it's hard to know exactly what we have there, because it's like until one of those wingers gets forward enough or almost to the line, then our team is making runs forward instead of going forward at strategic moments. You know what I mean? So I was real frustrated with Kizza. I was pretty happy with Sterling. It just makes me wonder like why we haven't seen more of EJ. And like, all right, Deanne's not really scoring. Kizza and Sterling, I mean, they have 3 goals apiece, but we're 11 games into the season now.
Yeah.
Like, make a change, do something different, like see what happens, you know?
At this point, statistically, we're scoring, I think, every 99 minutes. So for those of you doing the math, that's less than once per game, which is not good. It feels like the times when we are most dangerous is when we get the ball to Etu on the corner of the box. That's the only time I feel confident that like, oh, something might happen here. But otherwise, it just feels too predictable. Mondo said in chat that the other teams just don't fear us in the final third, and I think that's fair.
And why would they?
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we want to bring up the stat now, but worst passing accuracy in the league.
Yeah.
Hounds. I mean, it's more than just our forwards, which is the problem. There's almost too many leaks right now to, think of a clear way to, keep the boat from sinking. And it's not. I don't want to make it sound so dire that there's no way to fix this problem, because there is. Like, we've seen Bob turn it around, but it's definitely, there's a lot of issues right now because we're talking about the forwards right now, and I also think this whole Gabby in net is not working. And I know the first goal was, pretty much impossible for him to save. That second goal, that looked pretty savable to me. And how many goals have we let up in the last 3 games? Let in? I mean, I know the whole conversation with Bush on the podcast about, consistency is important. Like, he's consistently letting goals in. I don't know what else you like. That's not good. And even the announcer made this analogy, and it was a positive. He was talking about how every Pittsburgh team, no matter what, a Bob team's going to work hard. They're always going to be the hardest working team. And I get that. And I understand that's what's important for Bob. And I've harped on this before, but it's just putting the best player in is sometimes the best choice. I don't care if that player doesn't play as hard as someone else or, try as hard. But if he's a better player, he's a better player. And I feel like from what we've seen, Dick is a better keeper and he should be in.
I mean, up to this game, and I still don't know how I feel about this, but up to this game, Justin, I think you made a comment, and I sort of agree with it, where like I don't really care. Like the chances and the saves have been, in my mind, somewhat the same, and so it's not that big of a difference. That second goal was bad. I was like, what? Like, how? Huh? And then you kind of see, like, he just let him have the inside post. And I understand that he was trying to anticipate that Marlon was making the run and the cross was coming in, but that was kind of a freebie. Have you changed at all, Justin, in terms of your stance on the keeper situation?
No, I don't think I have. I think this is we ran into a team that was really hot. Memphis has been really good, put a lot of goals in the last 5 games. And so do I fault them for giving up 2 goals? No, I don't think so. I think, I think my thing is until we figure some of the other issues, I don't know how you judge either keeper. I mean, Dick, like Dick seemed to have gotten it together in the last 4 or so. His first 3 games, he gave up 6-7 goals. So I don't know how we're judging. I just don't know until we get all the accuracy, the lack of chances that are going in the net. We're still leading the league in missed chances, I think. And so and figure out some of this stuff. Like, I don't know how you judge these keepers to see which one's better.
Yeah. As we're just like picking apart positions, I'll go one step in front of the keeper. I think we have a legit issue and don't have a third center back that we feel confident about. And this might be part of the reason why Lily sort of started Griffin back there at the beginning of the season. I'm hoping to talk to Danny this week, and I'll ask him straight up, like, hey, why were you a center back? But it clearly, Asumanu, I think, has been fine, hasn't been great. We put Suber in, and I think the number of times that Suber passed to nobody or to out of bounds or just gave the ball up was bad. And just to sort of confirm my eye test, I went on the USL site to sort of get the stats for the game. And essentially, when you look at the passing accuracy across our back line, Pat Hogan had an 81% pass accuracy. Luke Biasi had 84.5. Sean Suber had 68. So, like, you're like, it's not awful. When you look at the passing accuracy in our opponent's half, Pat Hogan had 64%. Pat is rarely in our opponent's half. He's typically like sort of on our side. Luke Biasi had 72% passing accuracy, which isn't bad. Suber was 42.9. So more than half of his passes in the opponent's half went to somebody other than a hound, which is not good. So I don't know what you do about that. It's just like, who else? We kind of have run through. I haven't heard anything about Mike DeShields. I don't know where he is. I don't know. Nobody's giving us injury reports at this point because the team wants to keep that close to the vest, which is fine. Like, that's a tactical thing on their part. But we don't have anybody else. So I don't know what you do.
Is it fine? I've been thinking about that as well lately. And like, imagine you're a player, you play for the Hounds, and you're injured, and you're not getting minutes, and no one knows why you're not getting minutes, and they're assuming it's because you're not a good player, and you're not doing it in the locker room, like you're not performing off the field during practice, and that looks bad on you, and so no one knows you're injured. And like, as a player, I think I'd be mad about that. I don't know if there's like some secret information that coaches have that they're like letting people know, but like, yeah, as a player, yeah, that looks bad on you. So I think it isn't that fine that people don't know if you're injured or not.
Well, and at this point too, what is the harm in saying that like Mike DeShields is injured? Like, I don't think opposing teams are like, oh crap, Mike DeShields is in. Like, nobody's looking at that as being like the difference maker. If it was like Danny Griffin's injured, they'd be like, oh, okay, let's plan around that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want some more depressing stats, so attacking goals, we're in the bottom 3 for goals for the season. For shots, we're in the bottom 3rd for shots on goal. I mean, clean sheets, we already know we're not doing great there. But goals conceded, yeah, we're in 18th place for goals conceded.
Yeah. Justin, what are your thoughts on the whole center back situation?
I mean, I'm a stats guy, and if you're gonna pull stats,
here we go. Okay.
Osumanu is 3rd on the team in the number of passes he's hit, and he's hit him at a 70 accuracy, 65.8 in the opponent's half. So he's doing a lot better than the players who played last night at passing the ball. I don't know. I like Osumanu a lot. I think he's actually probably, other than Hogan, our best center back. I'm not sure he still wants to play center back. I think what you were calling out what was happening last night for a little while is like Blackstock was kind of getting ahead as like a winger, forward, whatever, and Biasi was running that line. And so I don't know that Biasi wants to play center back, but he's there. I think Osumanu to me is the second best center back on the team. So I did find it was, I think it is weird. He was the team in minutes going into last night, so I kind of understand being like, all right, cool, let's get him a rest. I think any Iron Man the way Danny Griffin is. So like, you're gonna see guys get rest at times, but that did feel like a weird. Like, all right, cool, team's hot. Let's pull our second best center back off the field. I don't know. That was weird to me. Suber was not good, and I didn't like him. I mentioned it on the chat last night. I think what's interesting is like, yes, you could say that this was Bob tinkering, and maybe it was a little bit, but to this point in the season, Suber, Semple, and Rivera, the 3 guys he put on the field, are his first 3 guys off the bench for, and so it's like, all right, cool. He started his first 3 subs, so it's still his top 14 guys. This is the conundrum with this whole team. Is like some of the games you watch, first half against North Carolina, you watch it. All right, cool. This team seems pretty good. They're on the front foot. They got the goal right at the end of the half, and then they just fell apart in the second half. This same thing this game. It seemed pretty good all the way. One moment they give up. Other than that, of a game, feel like we're gonna get a goal. They make a sub. We come out of halftime and we can't do a thing. And so I just wonder if it's like a fitness. Is it some of it is definitely the forwards, like we talked about. Could it be the goalkeeper? I don't know. Maybe either there's so many issues, or we're so close to being a good team, and we just haven't gotten a complete game together. And I don't know which way to go yet. I don't know which to feel like, if we're just a bad team this year, and I just need to accept it, or Bob's going to turn around and we're going to be good at some point. I don't know.
It's one of those things where, it feels like we need to give Bob the benefit of the doubt at this point, just because if history has shown anything, prior to this game, we said that the last time that the Hounds had this few points in the season, we ended up winning the Eastern Conference. So like we're definitely not out of it yet. It's not good that we, with this loss, we drop below the playoff line and are only 1 point ahead of Fraudford, who have a game in hand on us. So that's not good, especially considering that we're playing Indy this week, who have won their last 5, and then the Battery the week after that. So we're kind of setting ourselves up here for some pain. But I agree in the sense that we could be on the cusp of a breakout, but I also kind of was like hoping that maybe this was the game to do it. And clearly it was not. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to happen against Indy or the Battery as well. And what do you do? It's tough.
It's early. I mean, that's the only thing we have. I know it's not that early, but it's still a pretty long season. I mean, we're like third into the season at this point. Yeah. So like, there's a lot of time left to right this ship. It's just one of those situations where like, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel right now. Like, I'm not seeing like things that make me think, ooh, this just needs a click and we're good. I don't think that's the case. I think there's just too many things that need to click right now in order for us to right this ship. And so that's what gives me pause.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say in terms of positives, I guess one other negative real quick, turned on the game and my son was sitting next to me and his very first words were, "That's a baseball field." And I said, yes, it is a baseball field. And the phantom call against Rovey because Marlon tripped on the turf was just, that just says everything you need to know about playing with the turf on the baseball field. So
I went on a compilation of all the times people tripped on that infield, the sod that was put down, because it was so many, and also all the images of players stamping down the sod because it had ripped up and it looked like crap. It looked like they had just put like a carpet over top of the dirt, and yeah, it was terrible. And like at first, even in the Discord for the Steel Army, we were talking about like, we had a lot of chances for goals, but they're all on this crappy side of the field. So maybe, second half will be better because we'll actually be running towards the goal and not having the crap field. And that's the half that we looked the worst in. So, yeah.
So that's not good. Guys, any other negatives before we try to draw a few positives from this game?
We still had to do player of the match, even though.
Yeah. It always, anytime they announce the player match after a game like this, I'm just like, ugh, like you guys are just appeasing the sponsors. Like you gotta put out something for that sponsor that's sponsoring player of the match. I get it. Like, good for you. Yeah. I would say in terms of, positives, like legit positives, I think it's good that we're getting Dragišić some time. I think anytime that we announce sort of an academy assigning based on previous history, it feels almost like a PR thing where it's like, oh, look at this kid who came up through, and you hear about it, and then you literally forget their name 3 days later. And this is a case where I kind of thought the same thing was going to happen. We also announced late last week that we had signed another academy kid He's still a junior in high school, so we'll see how that sort of shakes out. But this is a case where not only did Dragic travel with the team, but he actually got some minutes. I think that's only going to sort of help his confidence. Could there be like a Robbie Mertz 2.0 in the making there? Who knows? We'll see. But I think at least getting him some minutes, betting him in, getting the guys used to him is a good thing. I also continue to think that Blackstock is a positive for us. It does make me wonder if, I don't think he's still listed as a forward. He might be listed as a forward, but is that potentially an out for us? I don't know. The dude still has sort of a rifle for a leg. But we'll see. I liked having him a bit further forward in this game because he was definitely causing them some havoc and trying to pin them back, especially in the first half. So who knows? Other positives for you guys? Was there anything else that you liked, Justin, in this one?
I'm kind of the same. I mean, I feel like I like Blackstock a lot. I like Itu a lot. And I feel like we kind of say, well, that's where we're creating a ton of their own attacks. It's not like we're just swinging the ball. Like a couple years ago in one of the we were struggling. Every single attack was going through Kenny going out to the wing and then he'd cross it in. And it was like it's more crosses than anyone else on the team. And it felt like that was the only chance we had to score. And that was the only thing we were doing to score. And this time it's like two wings, two players who are getting up and down and they feel like they're both feeling really dangerous. So I did like that. Like I said, I did actually really like Sterling's play, at least in the first half last night. And more, and that's where I felt like, man, if Mertz or somebody a little more offensive was on the field with him, I felt like Sample, Rovey, and Danny were all kind of hanging back. You need an offensive midfielder who's going to come in and not get into the box. So, yeah, I wish we had that earlier in the game. But
agreed. Josh, any positives?
And like you said,
go ahead, Justin.
Like you said, like Blackstock and Itu, both like their crosses are good. Their crosses are okay. If they were just a little bit better, it seems like more to their crosses are they're hard crosses across the box, but they're impossible to get to, or they're way. All right, just that one little bit of difference, whether it's softer or harder, a little more looping, back at the penalty spot, further box, whatever it is. It seems like they just miss all the time. And if they would hit on some of these, then I think we'd be okay.
Yeah. Josh, any positives?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot was made of the fact that we had the most returning players that we've ever had from last season, and I'm thinking about these players and how we thought about them last season, like Mertz and Griffin and Rovey, Hogan, like Etu. We've seen them at their best last season, I feel like, and so we know that they can be that again. I know we're missing people like Farrell and DeSantos, and like there are players, and obviously Dequa, but I don't think those players is what made the team the best team. So I do hope that since we know that they can be that they can be that again, basically. So it's more of a potential of the team than it is a positive, I guess. But I do know that potential for what they could become again is there. I do think that we need some more pieces. Like, I don't know if the pieces we have right now are the pieces that are enough to make that team great again. And that's what worries me. And I don't know how that works right now. I don't know if like the likelihood of getting more pieces is, but yeah, that's something.
Yeah, I did go and look. Typically the roster freeze isn't until September. So in theory, we could add more players. I don't know where we're at roster cap wise compared. I think we can have 30. Well, the rules that the USL has up on their site is as of 2022. So they've not updated their site to include 2024, but I think at the time it was 30 players on your roster. So I didn't go through and look and see everybody that was signed, but I feel like we're under that still. But at the same time, I don't know where else you're going to go and get players to fill in some of these spots. I do kind of feel like we are missing a piece or two. And so it's really going to take some magic from Bob to figure out how to make this work without those pieces. But I guess we shall see.
I mean, I think where you can get some of those pieces is like the mid, when the July transfer window for MLS opens up and all of a sudden they start signing, these stuff after their seasons, then maybe they're dropping their third forward or want minutes for their homegrown player who, now is not going to get minutes with the MLS team. But they maybe want something more competitive than MLS too.
Yeah.
So that might be a chance where you could find somebody is, that's how we found Kizza. So, could we like that?
Yeah. Just random fun fact. I learned this weekend that our old buddy Toby Adewale is playing over in the 4th division in Germany. I'm not saying that we sign him, but I was like, oh, good for Toby. Like, I haven't talked to him for a few seasons, but I'm glad he's still playing. I know he was over in St. Louis for a little bit. He played in Phoenix, but now he's over in Germany. So good on him.
It's a bad sign when you started looking up your exes and seeing how they're doing.
Yeah.
Well played, Josh. Well played.
You're not wrong, man. Yeah. Put him on Facebook. Like, what's he up to? Yeah.
How are they doing? Where are they at now?
Oh man. Guys, any other thoughts on this one?
I'm not saying these announcers did their own. I'm not saying these announcers didn't do their own research or whatnot, but they did bring up the two statistics they listen to Mongols about the touches in the opposition box and the big chances missed. I was like, I said that earlier this week. I wonder if that was part of their match.
Yeah. They also kept making a point of being like, this is the most lively I've ever seen Bob Lilly. I'm like, have you ever seen Bob Lilly? Like, this was par for the course, guys. They also made some other comment, Josh. It might have been the one that you referenced earlier. They were like, oh, if you're in Pittsburgh, you got to be a hard-working defensive team. My wife turned to me. She was like, that's a little stereotypical, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it is. She was like, should I be offended by that? I was like, no, it's fine.
That just makes me think of every time Bob would get upset when people would say he was defensively minded only.
Yeah.
Like he's, and he would just be like, no, that's not what he would get so upset.
Yeah. All right. Last call. Any other thoughts on this one?
It's a blip, right? It's just a blip. We're fine. This will get better.
Listen, like I said, if history has anything to say about this, in a few weeks' time, we're going to look back and be like, remember when we were really worried about this team? Like, when they started firing all cylinders. I'm really hoping that's the case. Like I said, the next few games are tough. And if we get something out of these next 2 games, then great. I'd like to see some goals. Like, guys, come on, please. Just like score 2. Also, I mean, not to go back on negatives, we need corner kicks that aren't just get the ball to Hogan. Like, we got to come up with something else because teams have figured that out. He's great. He's getting up there. He's getting chances. But, like, we need something else, guys. Like, let's mix it up a little bit. So,
was it Roby that took that first kick outside the box? The
one that kind of like rolled to
the one that just kind of just slowly rolled towards the keeper and he like slowly bent down and just picked it up. I was like, oh yes.
Yeah, I think that was Griffin, but it was like a set piece
Griffin,
where one of them like touched it and then like held it and then Griffin shot it and it just kind of like
that was Griffin. That's right. Yeah, that was rough. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that loss drops us below the playoff line. Not that we really care at this point. We're only 11 games in. But the Hounds are going to have some scraping and clawing to do to get back into this one. I think at this point, I'm going to be probably wrong here. I think Charlotte have twice as many points as we do, and they're sitting at the top. So, like, trying to chase them down is really going to be difficult. Next up, as I mentioned, we face Indy 11 at home on Saturday. Indy won their last 5 and they've outscored their opponents 12-4. So this is a case where Fort Highmark really needs to make a resurgence, and hopefully we can get some counterattack goals in there and swing the tide back in our favor. Guys, any other thoughts before we sign off on this one?
That's all I got.
Yeah.
We're coming back in like a month and a half, so I hope the season has turned around and makes our. I don't want to have come out to Pittsburgh just to pay for a Liverpool ticket. Still kind of upset we paid for a Liverpool ticket, but
you sucker.
Yeah.
I resisted. I'm not going to Liverpool.
Listen, Josh, we wouldn't be coming out for the Riverhounds game if we weren't also going to Liverpool games. So
yeah,
we're gonna make our weekend in Pittsburgh worth it.
Well, that's what we think. Obviously, let us know what you think about the loss, about what the Hounds need to sort of figure out here. We have a lot of shows, as I mentioned, coming up again this week. So you will be definitely tapped in, learn all about Indy, learn about what's going on inside the team, and we'll do a little prediction. So send us your prediction as well. It doesn't have to be a score prediction against Indy. It could just be lineup stuff. It could be what you think is going on in Bob's head, and we will discuss it as part of that show too. But otherwise, thanks again, everybody. We will talk to you very, very soon.